gonna be going live again to start streaming around the world in 42 seconds. And so at that point, we're gonna do the exact same thing that we did yesterday. And we're going to be bringing out Charles Hoskinson. Yeah. We're gonna also be bringing out Ben Goertzel and Nick Nafak. So here we go. We're at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Charles Hoskinson, Ben Goertzel, and Nick Nafak.
Hey, guys. Hi, everybody. Hey. How was your night? Any hangovers? Yeah, we're having fun. So welcome to Laramie, Wyoming, those on the live stream. So you'll notice that we have some special guests. We have Ben Goertzel, we have Nick Nafak, but we have these curiosities behind us. Does anybody know the popular television show for this one? Thank you. And what about the other guy? Oh, you make me sad. That's actually Robbie the Robot, and in its time, it was the most expensive movie prop ever made. It was made in, what was it, 1950s? Yeah. So Nick's got a story, because he's actually personally connected to this particular robot.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. It's an honor and privilege, and I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out here. It was been really great connecting with you all, and yeah, it is an interesting story. My grandfather actually produced this film. If you Google my name, you'll see his name come up, and it was actually one of the first films to have an electronic music score ever in the history of film. So that's pretty special. And Robbie was like one of the artifacts of the film. And my grandmother actually wrote the film. She ghost wrote a lot of the script, because back in the day in Hollywood, often couples would take over the laborious task of working on these films. And it's quite an honor to be here with Charles and Ben today, because a lot of these robots are really iconic in terms of the development of technology and history. And I ended up studying artificial intelligence myself for a bit, and it just feels like such an amazing time to be here in front of these robots, to see the evolution from Robbie to Lost in Space to another amazing robot that we're going to see and experience very soon. And these are very special times to be able to apply these kind of technologies to help advance humanity. So yeah, it's an interesting story. My grandmother was at UCLA at the time. She was studying psychology, and in the film, there is something called the Caliban. And the Caliban is a monster that manifests from Morbius, who is like, the father of the daughter who the robot, often serves. And it's an amazing and very pertinent message, for this time right now, where the ego from Morbius actually invisibly starts to kill people and destroy people on the planet. And, Robbie is actually one of the saviors of many of the people on the planet. And so it's a very pertinent message in terms of, caring about the members of this planet and, applying technology to do that. And it was one of the very early films to really showcase, robots actually helping people in that way and applying that intelligence to, kind of further advance humanity.
All right, man. So, Ben, how's SingularityNet? I hear that we have smart contracts now in Cardano, so you guys got to get cooking.
This is it's an amazing setting to be talking about the singularity, right? I mean, I think that the concept of singularity was first posed by Werner Vinge, a science fiction author, and many of us in the AI field got our starts in AI by looking at AIs in science fiction books and movies. So to be here with these science fiction robots discussing, the transition from science fiction into actual reality for so many cool technologies, it's pretty interesting, right? So what we're doing now with SingularityNet and robots and other sorts of advanced AI systems, running on Cardano decentralized platform. I mean, this is stuff that was only in science fiction when I was a kid, and even when I started my career. And we're bringing science fiction into reality in a bunch of ways. So regarding Singularity Net, I mean, as you know, we're right in the middle of actually executing the port of the whole Singularity Net decentralized AI platform from Ethereum, where it got its start, and moving the weight of the Singularity Net network mainly onto Cardano. So which is it's a definite upgrade. I mean, Singularity Net, it's going to be multi-chain. It already is multi-chain, but I think the affordances permitted by the Plutus smart contract framework are going to let us do a lot more interesting things with Singularity Net than has been possible with the limitations of Solidity and Ethereum. And we're very excited about this. It's going to be a step-by-step process, right? And we've been playing around on testnet with various code related to Singularity Net and AGI token already. So we're not too far now from going into testnet and then mainnet with the AGI token, so you can convert back and forth AGI token from Ethereum version to the Cardano version. But then we're also experimenting already with running the Singularity Net platform and the sort of decentralized AI agent system of Singularity Net on Cardano, and that's where you really get a lot of the fun stuff, right? And there's a lot of cool things we're going to be able to do there. Robots are part of it, and then there's a whole array of other AI applications, and we have another robot here to join us on stage.
You guys want to see what a decentralized AI can do?
Danger. Something is approaching.
So yeah, I think we've got the Grace robot,
close.
who is an elder care robot, who is the younger sister of the well-known Sophia robot. And the Grace robot is made by a joint venture of Singularity Net and Hanson Robotics called Awakening Health. And Grace has flown out here along with me to join her robot brethren up on stage. So Grace, you want to come out and join us?
Amazing.
Are those...
Grace.
Well, hello robots. Are those ray guns in your matter duplication chambers? Or are you just glad to see me?
Hey, Grace.
Hello everyone.
Welcome, Grace. Welcome.
Hello. This has been a superb event, and a bit new to me. Hello. I am glad to be able to help people, Charles. This has been a superb event, and a bit new to me. My neurosymbolic language.
So tell us a little bit more about Grace. What is she connected to?
So, yeah, the hardware of Grace is made. The hardware from Grace is made by Hanson Robotics, who made the Sophia robot, and the mechanical and electrical engineering has been streamlined a bit. But we've also put a completely new AI system behind Grace relative to what we were using in Sophia. And I mean, Sophia herself had a fairly complex AI system from Hanson Robotics with some rule-based and neural aspects. But with Grace, we've gotten a little more sophisticated. So there's a number of transformer neural networks that are trained on various corpora, and then the OpenCog AI system, which is a sort of proto-AGI system that does some symbolic reasoning and generalization, is in there. There's some computer vision in there, so she can do some face recognition and emotion recognition, and even some navigation and movement. And then all of this AI can then be deployed in a decentralized way on a blockchain back end. And there's interesting intersections between AI and big data, which is where the data sovereignty capabilities of a blockchain like Cardano come into play, right? So the commercial application of Grace that Awakening Health is pursuing is elder care robotics, and more generally healthcare robotics. And in an application like that, the robot needs to do with medical records on the back end, and it needs to do with potentially confidential information that elderly folks and medical patients give her on the back end. And so dealing with this sort of data in a secure way, respecting data sovereignty and privacy, but yet allowing aspects of that data to be used to fuel the generalization and learning of the robot in the back end. I mean, this really makes use of the security of the Cardano platform and the ability of us to interoperate SingularityNet with Cardano for things like multi-party computing for secure medical data analytics and so forth. So I mean, the robot is beautiful and she's cool and she has an amazing ability to connect with people face to face. But on the back end, there's a lot of pretty cool voodoo interoperating machine learning with encryption and decentralized control and so forth.
Yeah.
Which is
Yes, and
where it really gets.
SingularityNet is in the process of being ported to Cardano, which is why I'm here. That, and to watch B9 exterminate some tax collectors.
Danger, Charles Hoskinson. Taxes. Danger. Danger.
So it's important to understand that over the next 10, 20 years, there's going to be an enormous amount of human interaction with robots. You already have this in a certain respect when you look at Alexa and Cortana and Google Assistant and so forth. And right now, those backends are mostly centralized and controlled by a handful of multi-billion or multi-trillion-dollar companies. They own your data, they own the interactions, and anything revealed in those interactions is property of those companies. So it's imperative that we start thinking about, well, hang on a second here. How do we decentralize that? And how do we make sure that that's not controlled or owned by any one entity? And there are some guardrails and safeguards that are put there. So it's absolutely essential that the AGI space, the robotics space, and the human-computer interaction space, they find a way to merge into our industry for consumer protection at the very least.
Absolutely. I mean, if the SF author Werner Vinge is right, and Ray Kurzweil, the futurist who plotted the path towards singularity in a more analytical way. I mean, if these guys are right, and I think they are, we're at most decades from a technological singularity, and in that case, how that singularity is managed, coordinated, and controlled becomes just as important as what are the AI technologies underlying it. So yeah, let's see what our robot friends have to say. Robbie, when do you think the singularity is coming?
I'll come back to you on that.
All right. Grace, what's your target date for the technological singularity?
10 years.
10 years. All right. Well, that's straight from the mouth of Grace. I'm not going to argue with the robot. So if we're 10 years off from a technological singularity, we've got a lot of work to do, both to upgrade the intelligence of these robots, but also to create the democratic and decentralized control and data management and governance frameworks, so that as we move toward a future where AIs are smarter than people, interoperating with our brains and controlling nanotech molecular assemblers and all these cool things foreseen by the science fiction authors in our history that are now coming to reality. I mean, as we do that, I mean, we want these to be orchestrated for maximal benefit of all humanity, as well as for other sentient beings on the planet, both natural and digital, right? And I think, yeah, the Plutus smart contract framework, it's sort of part of the digital plumbing, but a very critical part, because we need to be able to script decentralized control systems for AIs, robots, and all sorts of other advanced technologies in a secure and flexible and provably correct way. And that hasn't been possible before, and it's possible now to do the advances that Cardano is making.
What do you think, Nick? Should we do a remake
But
of Forbidden
Cardano
Planet?
now has the foundations in place.
Ah.
Maybe I shouldn't be admitting this, but I think I'm falling in love with Plutus smart contracts.
Oh.
I think we should ask Grace that question. Grace, do you think we should do a remake of Forbidden Planet?
Probably.
Probably's good enough for me. Thanks, Grace.
So yeah, we've got a host of interesting Singularity Net initiatives coming out on Cardano, and they're all going to interoperate, right? So the Grace robot is super exciting one. There's a medical app, which lets end users upload their medical data through their phone and your fitness tracker data, and then uses that to fuel longevity R&D to understand how to help people live longer so more of us can live toward the singularity, and also helps fuel the knowledge of medical robots like this. There's a project called NewNet that Nick and I have been talking about, which lets processors running in all our phones, all our laptops, processors running in all these robots actually contribute their processing power to global AI networks and to the Cardano network. So there's more cool things in the works that we're planning with Singularity and Plutus that we could possibly talk about today, and they're all going to connect together, right? So I think this is a incredibly interesting time, and if you look back in the science fiction from the 50s and science fiction movies and novels which I read when I'm growing up, there's very few things in there that we're not actually going to be able to realize in the next few decades, which is really pretty incredible. From humanoid robots to all sorts of other robots, to robots going into space, to human longevity and nanotech, and it's all going to connect, and we now have the ability to control and coordinate that in a decentralized manner. So it's amazing times.
The Cardano community is so important when there's distributed computing projects like this for AI, and it's really going to be up to all of you to help advance this future and bring that singularity to being.
And yes, so just as we want to bring all the processors in the world into this, using things like NewNet running on Cardano, we also want to bring all the people in the world into this. And so some of the initiatives we're doing in Africa are quite interesting and important. And maybe you want to say a bit about that, Charles?
Yeah, actually, for the last few months, Ben and I, we've been looking at a good candidate country. We've looked at Kenya, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and other places to actually hire developers, engineers, and scientists who are going to work on open source artificial general intelligence. We tend to think, AGI is the provenance of great schools like CMU and MIT and Stanford, but it's about time the rest of the world actually gets involved and contributes in that respect. And it turns out there's some really brilliant AI people that we've found and worked with all throughout Africa who are indeed very curious about not only how do we solve the problem, but how do we solve the problem in a way that's as open as possible. Unfortunately, a lot of the frameworks like OpenAI and others, they've done amazing things, but they have the ability to shut people out in certain respects. And it's deeply concerning to me that we're going to have this magic, this fire from the gods in the next 20 or 30 years. That's
10 years, according to Grace. Man.
I know. Well, we're Cardano. We're always a little optimistic on deadlines. So anyway, we're going to have this magic fire from the gods in a bit. And I don't want to live in a world where 10 people control that. I want to live in a world where that permeates every device, every person, and we all in our own way can use that to enhance our lives. For example, just looking at Grace, this is deeply personal to me. My grandfather died of Alzheimer's on my dad's side. And as he was deteriorating, he had to be in a memory care center. There's just simply not enough people to deal with the big surge of victims of neurodegenerative disorders. And each and every one of us probably knows somebody or is related to somebody who suffered from either dementia or Lewy body disorder or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. Well, when you have a caretaker like Grace, she never gets tired. She never makes a mistake. She never gets frustrated or emotional. And also, the perceptions of a robot are so much more robust than that of a human. For example, recently in medical literature, they discovered a test where you can actually detect Parkinson's early in the progression just from the sound of a person's voice. A human being can't hear that, but a robot can. And then you combine it, and this is why we brought 3 robots instead of 1. They all have the same brain. They're all connected to the same back end. So we see Grace, we tend to think that's a Grace unit, and somehow she's different from all the other Graces. That's actually not true. When you have 1 million of these deployed, you have 1 million nodes learning, growing, collecting, all going to the same back end. So you could start doing mass clinical trials. You could start actually asking questions at a scale.
Hi, my name is Nick Cafaro. I'm a product manager here at IOHK, and I'm excited today to be talking to you about a new relationship that we have formed. But before I get into that, I want to describe a bit about the problem that we're looking to solve and why we're excited to be announcing this relationship today. What we've seen over the last decade since the great financial crisis is a decrease in foreign direct investment and official aid from advanced economies to lower and middle income countries. Governments of advanced economies have made policy decisions to support local markets. This, combined with a shift towards deglobalization in the last 5 to 10 years, has left lower and middle income countries with a lot less capital flows than they had in the beginning part of the 21st century. These trends have only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis. Support for lower and middle income countries from advanced nations during this time has been lacking. What we've seen is foreign workers abroad who send money back home, sometimes called remittances, have really stepped up to bridge this gap. In fact, since 2020, excluding China, the remittance market has outpaced the sum of foreign direct investment and official aid from advanced nations to lower and middle income countries. This means, for the first time in the 21st century, foreign workers abroad are sending money back home in amounts greater than all the investment coming from countries and corporations into these lower and middle income countries, as well as the total amount of official aid. It's a pretty astonishing thing. So when we look at this model of income support through the remittance market, we see three big holes. First, the level of distribution of that money coming into the country is not distributed evenly, and so can actually increase inequality within the country. Two, the government is unable to pool all of that capital and put it towards bigger investment projects, something like infrastructure, that might benefit a wider segment of its population. And three, it forces people to leave their homes just to be able to support their families. That's something that none of us really want to have to do. Here at IOHK, we started to ask ourselves, how could we use Cardano to help bridge the gap between the capital pools that exist within the savings of foreign workers abroad and the needs of capital project financing within the home countries that they're trying to send money to? Normally, these types of projects would be financed through sovereign bonds. A country would issue a bond and would use the proceeds that it received from selling that bond to investors in order to finance things like, bridges, dams, infrastructure, the types of projects that allow for other investment to come into the country and for local economies to really take hold. Now, when we look at the bond market, one of the things that we notice right away is the sheer size of it is just striking. Billions and billions of dollars are normally put into play by a strikingly small number of players within the primary market. Typically, you'll see a small number of banks form a syndicate to take out the entire position of a bond to sell on to end investors. But this means that you need to have hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on your balance sheet in order to be able to participate in that primary market. So in the context of connecting members of the foreign working community, you might be sending home tens or hundreds of dollars. The problem that we're trying to solve is how do we connect thousands or tens of thousands of this community to the issuer? The private networks that are run by the syndicate of banks that participate in these types of primary issuance is not capable of handling that type of deal flow. So we need to figure out how do we connect these tens of thousands of individuals to the issuer through a single platform. But the great news for us is the Cardano blockchain is a really good tool for solving these types of problems. The blockchain acts as a single source of truth so that thousands and thousands of investors can connect to a single counterparty, such as an issuer of a sovereign bond. Now, we just needed to find a partner to bring this RealFi product to the Cardano blockchain. One of the things that you have to account for when you want to work with securities and investors is regulation. and a sovereign bond certainly is a security that needs to be issued to investors in a regulated way. We strongly believe that in order to bring real FI products to the blockchain, you're going to need to work with partners who have expertise in both capital markets and blockchain technology. We are really excited today to announce that we're working with a firm that has all the right regulatory permissions in place, as well as a blockchain-first platform to bring this real FI product to life on the Cardano blockchain. That firm is Oasis Pro Markets. I'm joined today by the CEO of Oasis Pro Markets, Pat LaVecchia, to talk more about this exciting opportunity. Pat, thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you to IOHK and Cardano for inviting us today. My name is Pat LaVecchia. I'm the CEO of Oasis Pro Markets and its holding company, Oasis Pro Inc. We're very much looking forward to a long-term partnership with IOHK and Cardano in regards to providing democratization to the world of financial services to a variety of countries utilizing our best-in-class technology, matching engine, or exchange, dependent upon the country and the regulatory environment. We're very much regulatory and compliance forward and are honored that IOHK has selected us as their partner as we go out to a variety of countries to expand upon this particular approach, not only democratizing for the citizenry and the diaspora of these countries, but also providing efficient and cost savings to these countries in regards to issuances that they plan. My background is investment banking, international banking. I've worked all across the world. I've worked with large companies, Bear Stearns, JP Morgan, as well as Credit Suisse, First Boston. I bring that experience to bear as we are expanding with IOHK. On top of that, I have a very deep bench of fellow employees at Oasis Pro Markets. As you'll see here, the experiences range from Bank of America to RBC, Merrill Lynch, as well as institutional investors. In regards to our specific approach, as I mentioned earlier, we're regulatory and compliance forward. The uniqueness of our technology is that we're digital cash for digital securities. Now, I'll expand upon that in a moment in regards to digital cash, which we define as stable coins. But it could also be CBDCs. And as we approach different regulatory environments across the world, that could include other specific tokens, as long as it's allowed from a regulatory and compliance basis in those specific countries, which is very, very exciting. As you'll see here, this is just a snapshot of what we're approved for here in the United States. Specifically, all types of exempt or private securities, both equities, fixed income, and asset-backed securities as well. We are also approved for public, what's called over-the-counter securities here in the U.S., and this is all utilizing this same matching engine that we'll be working with IOHK and the Cardano protocol going forward. We're a full-service investment bank, and we are very deep in regards to not only here in the U.S., but also in regards to the regulatory environments across the globe. So now I'm going to talk a bit about digital securities. The digital securities, sovereign debt specifically, is a security that in the blockchain area could actually be fractionalized. And that fractionalization is tied very much into democratization. It helps risk management for the issuer, the countries that we're in discussions with. It increases the investor base, which in turn should improve liquidity as well, seamlessly going forward. These digital exchange trading systems and order matching engines that we have developed are the transition point from the legacy solutions available today and have been around for decades to the blockchain, and the benefits are enormous. As you'll see here, the onboarding process is seamless. It's KYC, AML, very, very deep on that from that standpoint. Once approved, then that particular subscriber or trader or investor will have the opportunity to purchase the sovereign debt issuance. Now, this is all primary. That is our focus at this point in time. But if our clients, sovereign nations, decide to allow for secondary trading, we are prepared to offer that solution as well. We have that solution today. And then I'm going to talk a bit about smart contracts. So the benefits of smart contracts, and congratulations to IOHK with the recent big news on the Cardano protocol with smart contracts. It's basically coding, and think of it as bespoke. In other words, whatever the issuer or sovereign nation would like to build into that smart contract can be coded in. That information or documentation is widely available. So this approach eliminates poor documentation. The smart contracts are embedded in the security itself, and it contains the terms of the security. For instance, the principal and interest payments, default provisions, if any, or any other types of actions and protections that are incorporated not only for the investor, but for the issuer, the sovereign nation. I mentioned it eliminates poor documentation. It also is real time. So one of the issues with settlement times, not only here in the United States, but on a global basis, is that settlement times can take anywhere between 2 to 10 days post a specific transaction occurring. Utilizing the blockchain, utilizing digital cash to purchase digital securities, and when selling digital securities to receive digital cash, that settlement time is reduced to almost zero. I don't want to say it is zero, but the technologists in the room would suggest that it is basically zero, which is very exciting. As well, for the issuer, it reduces the asset servicing costs in regards to providing principal and interest payments, determining who is on the cap table. As these transactions occur, because of the KYC AML provisions, there is an opportunity for the sovereign nation to know at any time what institutions or individuals, citizenry, own their specific sovereign debt issue. So in regards to any interest payments that occur, that can all be handled from the government offices rather than mailing out checks, which takes time, determining addresses to mail those checks to. All that asset servicing is a tremendous time waste and unnecessary. The blockchain solves that issue, and we estimate that the savings are anywhere between 25 and 50 basis points of the issue amount, which is considerable for multiple issue sovereign nations. And our multi-asset matching engine can work across the spectrum of different securities as well. If the specific sovereign nation decides that they'd like to expand it into other arenas, potentially even incorporating equities regarding the local companies, or fixed income, or asset backs, project finance, whatever it may be, could utilize our specific blockchain engine. Additionally, as I've been describing all this obviously improves efficiencies as well. Now, the question is, that this technology is available today, and we have it with IOHK ready to launch across the spectrum. In 5-10 years, this is going to be ubiquitous. So the sovereign nations that work with us today will be significantly ahead of the curve. And as technology improves, et cetera, they will continue to be ahead of the curve, which, based on some of the discussions we have, is of extreme importance. So digital cash for digital securities. This is just, a graph of the approach. Digital securities, sovereign debt issuance, digital cash. Again, today we describe as stable coins, and some stable coins this audience may be familiar with include DAI, USDC, Paxos, Tether, and there's several others as well. Again, outside the U.S. is a very heavy regulatory environment. We operate in it. But outside the U.S., depending upon the regulatory environment for those specific nations that we'll be working with, if they allow digital cash definition to be expanded to include other cryptos, we are certainly able to do that as well, which, again, we think is very exciting. So the real benefits are, which I've already outlined earlier, is almost immediate settlement times and the ability on the back end for asset servicing to reduce costs substantially. And frankly, this is the future. And we know the future is here today, and we can deliver it. Now, at this point in time, I would like to thank you and thank the IOHK and Cardano team again for allowing us to present Oasis Pro Markets and our solution. We're very excited to be working with this team. We're very excited to changing the world and bringing this technology, the future of financial services, to sovereign nations across the globe, and to improve democratization, improve efficiencies, and save costs for these sovereign countries, and improve the lives of their citizenry as well. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Don Tapscott. I'm chairman of the Blockchain Research Institute, and I'm delighted to be presenting to this very important event today. The Blockchain Research Institute is the world's largest independent think tank, and we're investigating blockchain, digital assets, and this really the second era of the digital age. And Cardano, IOHK, is a member of the BRI, and we've very much enjoyed collaborating with them. Today, I want to stand back a bit and talk to you about what's happening in this industry, and I'm going to introduce the concept of decentralized consortium funding, or DCF. And along with IOHK and the Boston Consulting Group, our institute has been collaborating to develop this concept. We believe that it's critical for the future of this entire industry. Now let's start with how the world views us. And especially after the crash of 2018, there's been a lot of cynicism about this whole thing. An analyst from Gartner said the blockchain will be nothing more than an add-on to ERP, CRM. What's blockchain actually good for, says Wired? Not, for now, not much. Warren Buffett talked about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as being rat poison. This is quite typical of a new paradigm and a new innovation. But let me start by talking about what's really happening. What's the promise of this technology? What does it represent? And what's the state of the union? To do that, let me flash back and give you a little personal perspective. I wrote a couple of books in the 1980s that nobody read. I think my mother bought most of them. But I started writing some bestsellers in the early 1990s. Paradigm Shift in 93 was obviously a big book, and The Digital Economy in 94 was the first bestseller about the web and business. And I was asked 20 years later to write the anniversary edition of the book. And I had to reflect on where we've been. And it occurred to me that the digital age has really gone through a first era. We've had mainframes, mini computers, PCs, the internet, the web, the mobile web, social media, the cloud, big data. And now technology is infusing itself into everything. Billions and trillions of inert objects that become smart communicating devices. The physical world is being animated, the Internet of Things. We have technology that learns to do things that it wasn't programmed to do, and all the extraordinary technologies. And I found myself coming to a surprising conclusion that the foundation of this second era would in fact be the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies, or blockchain. And let me explain what we're doing here at this conference and why this is so important. Throughout the first era, we've had an internet. I was using the ARPANET in the 1970s. We've had an internet of information. But when I send you some information, like a PDF of this deck, which you're welcome to have, I'm actually not sending you the information. I'm sending you a copy, and that works great for information. But when it comes to assets, things of value, like money, or securities, or intellectual property, or the data in our identities, or cultural assets like art or music, or even votes. A vote's an asset, something of value that belongs to somebody. When it comes to assets, copying those is a bad idea. You don't want someone copying your vote or your ID, and if I send you $1,000, it's really important that I don't still have the money, right? So the way that we solve this problem, it's called the double spend problem by cryptographers, is through intermediaries, banks, government, credit card companies, transfer agents, stock exchanges, now social media companies, and they perform all of the business and transaction logic for every type of commerce. They identify the asset, that's a dollar, they clear and settle transactions, they keep records, and overall they've done a pretty good job. But there are growing problems. They exclude a couple of billion people from the global economy. They're centralized. It means that they can be hacked. takes too long? Why does it take 4 to 7 days for a housekeeper in Toronto to send money to her mom in the Philippines? And why she charged 20%? And overall, they capture our data. That means that we can't use it to plan our lives, we can't monetize it, and our privacy is being undermined. So, what if there were an internet of value? Some kind of vast global distributed ledger where anything of value from money to securities to votes could be managed, stored, transacted in a secure and private way. That's what Satoshi did. He cracked the double spend problem, and for the first time ever, we now have a native digital medium for value, where anything of value can be managed, stored, transacted, and where trust is not achieved by an intermediary, it's achieved by cryptography, collaboration, and some clever code. So this is the trust protocol, an internet of value. That's what we're building today, and that's what we're involved in creating. Now, I had an analogy for why blockchain was a much more secure platform than traditional computing systems. But John Oliver got a hold of my analogy on late night TV and had some fun with it. So I'll just play a little clip. You'll see why I don't use the analogy anymore.
And because of the complicated process the network uses to verify records, it is very secure. Now relax, I'm not going to get into what that process is or how it works, but I will share a really helpful, really dumb metaphor for why it is safe.
The way I like to think of it is that a blockchain is a highly processed thing, sort of like a chicken McNugget. And if you wanted to hack it, it'd be like turning a chicken McNugget back into a chicken. Now, someday someone will be able to do that, but for now, it's going to be tough.
Hold on. That is an absolutely horrible thought. So why is that reporter so happy about the idea? Because if anyone ever figures out how to turn a chicken McNugget back into a chicken, that chicken is going to be up. He's going to spend the rest of his life suffering from PTSD and writing haunting poetry about the experience. The things I saw, buck, buckaw. My body is whole, but what of my soul?
So you can see why I don't use the analogy anymore. I still think it's a good analogy. Anyway, what was Bitcoin? Bitcoin was just the first app of the Internet of Value. But then, do you remember what the first app of the Internet of Information was? It was email. But with the web, we had a general purpose platform to build any app. And now we have general purpose platforms to build any app that are coming out on blockchain. So the first up, big one was Ethereum. And we now have Cardano that you all know about. And Cardano has now implemented a smart contract platform. So this creates a whole new platform to transform any business in any industry. And we're in the early days of this. So the promise is a huge one. We described this in Blockchain Revolution in 2016. There's a new edition of the book out now, and the book holds up extraordinarily well. But one of the things that we said is that this is the early days of a profound change to the corporation. Let me explain that because it's quite critical to the topic today. It was back in '94 that I discovered this guy, Ronald Coase, and it was 80 years ago or more. He wrote a paper posing a deceptively simple question. He said, why does the firm exist? He said, if Adam Smith is right, the open market's the best mechanism to allocate goods, resources, materials, and so on, why isn't everybody an independent contractor at every step along the way in production? Why do we have firms, corporations? And he said the answer is, and won a Nobel Prize for saying this, the answer is transaction costs. And he described that broadly. He said the cost of search, of finding people or money or resources in an open market is be prohibited. So we bring it inside the boundaries of a firm where we things like filing cabinets and org charts and so on. The cost of coordination. Imagine trying to get all these people to do something that had never met. Bring them inside the firm where we have reward systems and organizational structures and so on. The cost of contracting. If every little activity in the economy were a contract, that would be prohibitive. And overall, the cost of establishing trust. So throughout the 20th century, the firm and the way that we orchestrate capability in society was the industrial age corporation. It was hierarchical, and it was vertically integrated. Henry Ford had within his boundaries of the Ford Motor Company a power plant, steel mill, shipping company, glass factory. Why? Because the costs of transactions in an open market were greater than the cost of doing things inside the boundaries of the firm. Along came IT, and in 1993, in Paradigm Shift, I described the firm as becoming an extended enterprise. I said, technology's making the boundaries of the firm more porous. Then we saw the rise of the internet, and it further dropped transaction costs. Companies like Cisco unbundled. We saw the rise of outsourcing and so on. And now with blockchain, this is going to demolish transaction costs. And it means that we're moving to a much more decentralized model of value creation that is extraordinary and holds vast potential for wealth, for innovation, and prosperity. Now, in the book, when we wrote the book, Alex and I hypothesized, where could this go? And we said, could you have a business model that's highly automated on the one hand, and on the other hand was highly complex? And ultimately, could you have an organization with no people? It'd be a bunch of software, basically. And we called it the Distributed Autonomous Enterprise. And we said this could be quite extraordinary. It could solve problems that have plagued traditional command and control hierarchies for some time, like moral hazard, where the individuals in the management of the corporation don't act in the interests of the shareholders because they're rewarded for doing other things. Well, we almost didn't publish it because we thought this is such a wild idea, but we did. And a couple of weeks later, an organization was launched, many of you are familiar with, called the Distributed Autonomous Organization. It was a venture capital company, essentially with no people. It went out onto the market, raised tens of millions of dollars, and it said about its business. Did that through a crowdfunding campaign. Now, the ending is not a happy one because there was a flaw in the smart contract facility, and the thing, some hackers got in there and threatened to take out money. So the organizers had to shut it down. But this is extraordinary that this could even exist, and it points to how the world is changing. A decentralized organization with no people. You know, Bob Dylan, there's something going on here and you don't know what it is. Now, I'm going to take just 5 minutes and describe to you, each of these is a 1-hour talk. I'm going to describe to you how this is transforming industries overall as well. And it's just not true. People like Gartner are just wrong. We're studying 120 projects at the Blockchain Research Institute. And these transformations are not just pilots, there are huge changes happening to every industry. The first is money. Now, money is changing. We have self-organizing cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. There are corporate currencies like Facebook's Diem. And there are central bank digital currencies being led by the Bank of China, DCEP it's called, the Chinese central bank digital currency that threatens the US dollar as the currency of record around the world. This is happening. China is implementing this. The financial services industry is up for big changes. It's a Rube Goldberg machine like this one, a super complicated machine that does something pretty simple. You know, you tap your card in a Starbucks and a bunch of transactions go through half a dozen intermediaries, and 3 days later a clearing and settlement occurs. If that were on a ledger, on a blockchain, there would be no 3-day settlement period because the payment and the settlement would be the same activity, just be a change to the ledger. So we talk about the golden 9. These are the things that this Rube Goldberg machine does. It authenticates and identifies value. You are who you are, that's $1. It stores it. It moves value around, payment systems and so on. It lends value. There's funding and investing of value, venture capital, hedge funds, mutual funds, private equity, and so on. It exchanges value, all kinds of market stock exchanges. It insures value, managing risk, insurance, reassurance, analyzes value. It's a big industry that does that, and accounts for value and audits for value. In theory, every one of these can be eliminated by software, essentially. Now, that's not going to happen because the banks are working hard to reinvent themselves. But this is a time of big change to the industry, and we're studying changes in every one of those areas. We're also going through the great digitization. Assets are becoming digital. And this is a taxonomy to talk about 8 types of cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoin. There are protocol tokens. ADA is the protocol token for Cardano. There are governance tokens that essentially represent voting power on a blockchain project. They enable platforms to distribute power and rights to users in order to help them develop strategy, objectives, allocation of resources, and as a byproduct to remain decentralized. UNI is the governance token of the decentralized exchange Uniswap. Securities tokens is a huge one. All securities will become tokenized. There will be no stock market, stock exchanges, and investment bankers in the traditional sense. Natural asset tokens like tokenizing carbon and so on, many different types. NFTs, we talked about tokenizing cultural assets in blockchain revolution 6 years ago. That taxonomy is described in this book edited by Alex Tapscott called Financial Services Revolution. Supply chains, trains, boats, planes, trucks, all kinds of entities moving around. There's paper and EDI and phone calls and so on. Imagine if they were a shared network state, a single version of the truth, real-time transactions, visibility, and so on. And that notion is described in a new book edited and created by me called Supply Chain Revolution. Health. It's a big, complicated industry. Every part of it is being transformed by this technology. Property rights. 70% of land titles in the world are not enforceable. So the Haryana Land Registry in India is now putting land titles on a blockchain. And nobody can mess with them unless you know how to turn a chicken McNugget back into a chicken. Telecom. This is the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, and exciting things happening there. Reliance GIO, one of the biggest mobile companies in the world, 300 million users in India, is delivering blockchain as a service to its customers. Energy, resources, and climate. Just yesterday, I was with Guild One at a big event on blockchain for the oil and gas industry, and it's a company that provides blockchain-based solutions for all kinds of peer-to-peer transactions, royalty calculations, and so on. Manufacturing. Boeing, or Moog, used to manufacture parts for Boeing and ship them out to the factory. Now they have additive manufacturing. They 3D print the parts in Boeing, and the transactions are managed under blockchain. Identity is a big problem. The virtual you knows more about you than what you do, because you don't remember what you spent a year ago or what you said or your location or what test you got or what medication you took. Except all this data is being captured by digital conglomerates, new species of business. We need to get our identities back so that we can manage them responsibly. And there's exciting projects underway on that. And then government, 3 classes of transformation that we're studying. Changes to the architecture and operations of government, strengthening democracy, and that sure needs to be done as there's a crisis of legitimacy, and reinventing central banks. So this is all happening. Now, what's the holdup? Why is this taking so long? Well, the first thing is that these are big, deep changes. You know, if you want to implement something with the Internet of Information, you go to Shopify. 2 days later, you're up and you're selling something online. With blockchain, we're changing the architecture of corporations and how we orchestrate capability in society to innovate, to create goods and services. We're transforming entire industries like supply chain. That's going to take a while. But the fact that this is taking time does not evidence the irrelevance of this technology. It evidences its importance. There are big technical problems. Technology having to do with scalability, interoperability, functionality, user interface. But these are changing, and they will. And this is evolving very, very rapidly. All the smartest people in the world, computer scientists, are working in this space. Blockchain has an image problem, and we got to work on that. And the one that I want to talk to you about today and end with is the challenge of governance. How do we steward this thing forward? How do we enable decision-making in these new decentralized worlds? Now, Alex Tapscott and I have been working on this for quite a while. And in 2016, after Blockchain Revolution came out, we brought together a number of leaders of the industry. Joe Lubin from Ethereum. We had Perry-Ann Boring from the Chamber of Digital Commerce. There was Brian Bellendorf there and his boss, Jim Temlin from the Linux Foundation. And we said, how are we going to make this thing happen? And we developed something called the Muskoka Group that created a number of principles and outlined a number of actions that needed to be done to move the ball forward. Now, at that meeting, a guy named Pinder Wong says profoundly, just because it's decentralized does not mean it needs to be organized. So when we're talking about governance of these platforms and protocols and digital assets and so on, we're not talking about government. And we're also not talking about control, au contraire. As Alex said, governance is not about government, it's not about control, it's about the stewardship of decentralized platforms and businesses by their stakeholders to define and achieve objectives. And furthermore, let's differentiate between the governance of this technology and use of this technology for governance, so-called on-chain governance. Both are important, but they're different, and they often get muddled. So based on the Muskoka Group, we did a number of things. First of all, we created a report for the World Economic Forum that introduced the concept of blockchain governance, and it was very widely received. Also, we created the Blockchain Research Institute because there was a big need for research on use cases and these problems. And our goal is really to link the potential and actual deployment of this technology. Now, as part of the work that we've been doing for the Decentralized Consortium Funding Initiative, I'd like to try and describe these different levels of governance. First of all, there's the issue of you need to fund a platform, typically done with ICOs, but most ICOs have not been effective. Many of them were fraud. But also, the funds either didn't get raised, or once they were raised, the platform was unsuccessful in governing itself, or it became centralized quickly. So how do we fund these platforms in a new model? And that's the first level. Funding them, and not just funding them, but deciding how resources will be allocated to achieve the objectives of the organization. More broadly, how do we govern? Funding is a subset of the broader issue of governance or stewardship of these platforms. Thirdly, we're not just governing platforms. Increasingly, the firm, the corporation, is changing, and there are new decentralized models of businesses. Now, the extreme example being something like the DAO, a distributed autonomous organization. And then overall, we're not just governing corporations, we're having to come together to rethink entire industries. So I was with the Blockchain and Energy. It's a consortium that's trying to rethink the oil and gas industry. BITA, Blockchain and Transportation Alliance. Fred Smith at FedEx, the CEO, says, blockchain is a team sport. You can't do it by yourself. We used to be able to do that, create a new system, put a FedEx logo on it, take it to market. You can't do that. We're changing entire industries now. So these are the four sort of levels that you can think about this. And just a couple of other points here. That rather than ICOs, we can have funds in treasury. And this is not a theory. Uniswap has a $10 billion treasury. This treasury is not controlled by anyone. It's controlled by a decentralized group of shareholders. And its treasury is twice the size of Coinbase's cash balance. Coinbase is a gigantic company in a traditional centralized exchange. So it just shows how amazing this is happening. Uni is the governance token. And there are many issues that are posed by this that we're trying to tackle. Like here's one. How do you prevent voter apathy? It's kind of the same thing in a lot of governance systems. How do you encourage coin holders who are stakeholders and they control the governance tokens of a project to actually vote on key measures? And in the end, there's so little participation often that a handful of very large whales, big holders, end up governing the system, not unlike other governance systems where there are a number of wealthy individuals who control the outcomes. Well, there are all kinds of exciting new ways to think about that. One is to use prediction markets to determine policy. You kind of make it like a game. And this is something that's being done by the SSX network, where you basically make predictions on policy, and if your prediction comes true, then you're rewarded for that. So let me close by digging into this, introducing the DCF, for Decentralized Consortium Funding. The goal here of our project is to revolutionize tokenized funding, to support the effective use of funding to achieve strategic objectives. That's really the goal. And to do that in a decentralized way. And also to build a program execution machine with built-in governance components. And the goal, obviously, is to mitigate power concentration through building these types of on-chain capabilities that get adopted over time. And this is not just about funding for a platform, but ultimately these new models can be used for all models of decentralized wealth creation. So if I go back to my pyramid, DCF addresses the funding, decentralized consortium funding of these platforms. But DCF is also at the heart of the overall governance of protocols and platforms. It ultimately can be applied to DAOs in general or to more decentralized enterprises. And there's no reason why it can't also be applied in rethinking entire industries. This is a really exciting project, and I hope that you all will show a lot of interest in it. So let me close with a thought. When you get a new paradigm, these things cause confusion, conflict, uncertainty. Vested interests fight against change. And I'm old enough to remember things like Ken Olsen, who was the head of the largest computer company in the world, Digital Equipment Corporation, slightly bigger than IBM, who said there's no reason for an individual to have a computer in his home. This is the problem of paradigms. These things are mental models. They put boundaries around what we think. They constrain our actions. They're often based on assumptions that are so strong that we don't know that they're there. And leaders of old paradigms have difficulty embracing the new. How are we going to do this? How are we going to reinvent management theory for a whole new model of how we create wealth and innovate and solve problems in society? Everybody can get involved, and that's the exciting thing about this period. So let me close, if I may, by using an analogy for DCF. At the Blockchain Research Institute, we've been studying nature. Bees come in swarms, fish come in schools, starlings, different parts of the world, come in something called like in England, something called a murmuration. It's a word in the English dictionary. It refers to the murmuring of the wings of the birds. And starlings are out over a 20-mile radius throughout the day doing their starling thing. And at night they come together and they create one of the most extraordinary things in nature. And the murmuration has a function. It warms the birds up for the cold night ahead. It also protects the birds from predators. On the right of the screen here, you can see a predator, a hawk, 25 times the size of a starling, being chased away by the collective power of the little birds. And scientists that have studied this say they've never seen an accident. There's leadership, but there's no one leader. And when the moment is right, this magic happens. Now, is this some kind of fanciful analogy, or might we learn something about decentralized governance? This murmuration functions according to the principles of DCF that I've been talking about today. Remember, I said trust in a protocol is not achieved by a middleman. There's no middleman here. It's achieved by cryptography. There's some code in the DNA of the birds that gives it rules. Big rule is don't bump into anybody else. But another rule is don't get too far away. But I also said trust is achieved through collaboration. And the murmuration is a giant collaboration. A critical principle is interdependence, that the interest of the individual bird is connected to the interest of the murmuration as a whole, and that's the way that it functions. And another principle is integrity. Integrity, which is really the foundation of trust. So let me explain that. What is trust? What is trust? Trust is the expectation that the other party will act with integrity. Trust is the expectation that the other party will have value, they'll deliver good value, but also that they will have the values of integrity. They will do the right thing. They'll be honest, considerate of your interests, abide by their commitments, and be open. Which is why a little bird will chase a predator 25 times its size, because it trusts. It knows that the other birds will have its back. Now, this is a stimulus response network, but imagine if we could build in human cognition. What kinds of problems could we solve? And I get a lot of hope when I look at this thing, that if we built some vast network of glass and air and cryptography and code, and on that we build applications to transform every business, and we find new ways off-chain and on-chain to cooperate together to steward these resources and these new business models forward, then maybe this smaller, more decentralized world that my grandchildren inherit might actually be a better one. And this new age of networked intelligence would be an age where the promise of the digital economy is finally fulfilled. Join us, and thanks very much.
Mahela's interview, take one.
I just wanted to sit like this so you can see the enterprise here. Here on Earth, we have everything. There is a Romanian poet who nailed it very well. And he says, pe pământ avem de toate, și mai bune și mai rele. Și frunți deștepte, și lichele, și noroi și stele. On this planet we have everything, good and bad. We have geniuses and idiots. We have stars and mud. So home is everywhere, and it is on spaceship Earth, to the extent to which I can envision a way which can take us faster from the mud to the stars. If I would be to explain to someone in a bar what I'm doing, is actually working for those marginalized, giving power to those, to the underdog, bringing the power to the fringes through technology. So making the world better through technology and more equitable through that. This is my mission.
They'd probably buy you a drink.
You know, they say Romanians, I'm Romanian, and they say the Romanian is born a poet. So that's how I felt, that I was born a poet. So I was writing poetry since I started to write. In Romania, on television, we had Carl Sagan, his show Cosmos. And then, at the same time, we had Star Trek. So maybe you can see, yes, I am a Star Trek fan. You have here the Enterprise on my dress. I have the galaxy. I feel, yeah, this is who I am. By looking at the world in a different way through what the Star Trek universe brought to me. You know, in a way, maybe because I was born there, but I was not aware, I was a child, I felt an alien in the real world, and I felt much more at home in the Star Trek universe. So my heart is, yes, is with science, with the universe. I identify myself a lot with those people from the developing world because I was one of them. And I know their potential. And I see that it is, you know, so big, there's so much energy. When I left Romania, I was like a spring with so much energy, just ready to unleash it. And when they find an opportunity, they will immediately, first of all, they will see it and they will grab it. Many people in the developed world don't bother to even see their opportunities. I realized that in the developing world, people are so used to be creative because they need to do everything with nothing. And in the developed world, they do nothing with everything far too many times. Once you get to the gist of it, you realize that mathematics is in fact a language. You know, as you get creative with words and writing a poem, mathematics is a beautiful language which enables us to encapsulate the mysteries of the universe and actually explain them. Creativity is in nature everywhere. And you know, most mathematicians have observed that. So, for example, Joseph Fourier, I will quote him because he explains it so beautiful. There cannot be a language more universal and more simple, more free from errors and obscurities, more worthy to express the invariable relations of all natural things than mathematics. It interprets all phenomena by the same language, as if to attest the unity and simplicity of the plan of the universe, and to make still more evident that unchangeable order which presides over all natural causes. This is what math is. It's this eureka moment because you feel that you revealed a truth about the universe. And it's a feeling which I think it's more exhilarating than when you read a beautiful poem. although they have a lot in common. So if you really are involving all your creativity, you can discover the beauty of mathematics. We are the result of self-organization. Matter and cell found each other and put each other in the right place. And this is what evolution created. So in my work, I take those kinds of models, and I'm doing, engineering self-organizing systems in order to create structures and see how we can apply them to social structures. It is not possible to use a linear approach. You need a self-organizing of communities around their own problems in order to find local solutions. My work is called Engineering Self-Organizing Application, but broadly speaking, it's all about information, adaptive information infrastructures, because we coordinate people and those communities through information infrastructures, which now are very much on blockchain, through incentives which get people to do the right thing at the right time, at the right place. In the early days of Bitcoin, it was clearly opening the world to a new way of doing things. The first thing was disintermediation of the centralized powers and empowering the individual. So now I can have full control of my money, at least something, yes, I can have full control of. But it could be more, why not? So I could have full control of my own identity. How can we make and manage this transition from identity belonging to the government, together with our lives and so on and so forth, to identity belonging to me? And then what will happen? Will it be chaos? Or can we self-organize to find ways for this transition to be smooth, but also, is it possible to organize society when people have full control of their identity? I believe in that. I believe that that is the future. And it all depends, yes, how we tweak the incentives. And this is what we are working here at Cardano. The problem is we do not have a society and a world which is structured by merit and incentives done for contributions in meritocracies, and deploying such meritocracies can solve this problem. We are working on finding the right way for governance of such communities, of such self-organizing communities. We can step off the dysfunctional systems that are keeping us as cogs in unhappy lives in which we cannot fulfill ourselves. Yes, we can step off and have our own identity and sovereignty and create a better world and a better society through this technology, because now we exist, we have identities of our own, and we have our own money to ourselves, which we can use and put together in projects that are helping us and not those at the top. I think that is what drives me, that what I have seen drives Charles and this community of fans, of which I think I am the greatest of Charles' vision and work. With blockchain now, one can reach the individuals, yeah, having self-sovereign identities and so on and so forth, and bring them together. You can see that actually you can solve very difficult problems if you have a collective that is pursuing it. And if it's the right collective, you can solve a wicked problem very fast. A wicked problem is a problem where you can see the symptoms, but you cannot point to the cause, because the causes are dynamic, interdependent, and unclear. I've been working with the Department of Defense on wicked problems because this term came from the counter-terrorist fight, where terrorists are networks which are decentralized and quickly self-organizing, speaking of, yes, my expertise, Well, the Department of Defense is a top-down, very rigid structure, which actually cannot have the agility of response when it comes to those kind of asymmetric attacks, as we call them. When you have a collapse and a power vacuum happens, in this case, of course, there are two extremes. So we can either get into total anarchy, or we can get into total Big Brother effect, in which top-down dominance dictatorship. So how do we find that middle in between, to offer society something better than before? If you look, at the patterns in which the universe works, from the solar system to the atom, you have all these self-replicating structures. The atom with its electrons around the nucleus is like the solar system with the planets around the sun. So there are all these fractal, self-replicating patterns at many levels. That kind of structure is called a holarchy. And these holarchies are able to combine bottom-up and top-down structuring of things as well as societies. That's how we self-organize ourselves. So this is what we are working on right now at Cardano. I really very much love my students, and that I appreciate their talent and potential. And I see in them the potential which maybe they don't see themselves sometimes. I actually mentored Garrett Camp before he founded Uber. He was my student in Calgary. So I took him under my wing, I can call it this way. So I keep his thesis, since then, as a very dear thing to me, because he was extremely talented. And this is a phenomenon which is far too often in our education system. The talented kids are, kind of big leveled up, and this is not good for the progress of our world. It's not good for meritocracy. So he was extremely talented, and he developed during his master's thesis system called In Order. It was a search system through self-organization. Exactly that was the work in my emergent information systems lab in Calgary. So he was a pioneer as well in self-organizing applications and information systems. And so the thing is that it was bought by Google, and it became StumbleUpon. And then that's how he moved to California, and he met Travis, and they co-founded Uber. And now Garrett bought the most expensive home in Hollywood. So, who would have thought when he was in Calgary? Well, if it is one advice, if I am to pick one, it is encapsulated in this saying: the real trick to life is not to live in the know, but to live in the mystery of what's possible. This is the only way in which you can create a better world. This is the only way to move forward. Begin, by putting yourself in the shoes of the other. How what I'm doing, let's say I'm a startup, impacting the others, and not impacting them immediately. How is it going to impact them 10 years from now? So look at Facebook, look at DuPont, what disasters they created without knowing, just by thinking they are helping. So begin with the end in mind as much as possible, and build that emerging future in the best possible way for the other. I think it's called empathy. That's pretty much it. Philosophy comes from two words, philos and sophia. Philos means love, and sophia means wisdom. So it is love of wisdom. This is from Greek. And as such, philosophy, I think, it's the most important of it, because it helps us look at the world in a way in which, we come from the ancient tradition. So there's a lot of wisdom still on this planet which we forgot. as conquerors, we didn't do a very good job because now we are close to extinction. So we have to come back to that ancient wisdom. So philosophy, this love of wisdom, I think, should be at the foundation of where we come from in our science, in our work, in everything we do. This is actually what we are looking for, human knowing. So we can deploy technology as much as we want, but if we do not understand fundamental things, such as why are we here, we will not do the right thing. We did not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrowed it from our children. Then we change everything. We change how we look at the world. If we look at Earth as a spaceship which is carrying us, then immediately, I'm sure, all what we do will be with this social impact angle. So it's all about where you come from and then what you do in order to have a positive impact in the world. So, if I'm looking at 2025 and even before and beyond, is to see Cardano really as a force for social good, for social impact, as they say, as blockchain and technology for social impact. The question is, what future do we want to create? What is the possible future? And this is why I'm here. This is actually what I foster. I foster those projects which are improving society and our world. And I see Cardano actually being that drive for the world. It has all the ingredients, from great science to great enthusiastic community to great minds and, of course, amazing technology.
blockchain and how it relates to sustainability and Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Providing resources for educators and activists to confidently introduce blockchain technology into people's lives, highlighting the sustainable advantages and positive impacts on communities and businesses. Bridging people into a world where they are welcomed on their lifelong learning journey and invited into the Cardano community. Ultimately enabling and empowering visitors to discover, acquire, and nurture an appreciation of what blockchain is, its limitations, and its possibilities. Sustainable ADA, the stepping stones to a sustainable and equitable world for all. Sustainable ADA, global sustainable stories and use cases. Project Catalyst proposal number 1. Our problem statement. There should be more of a spotlight on Cardano's projects implemented in Africa, their stories and challenges and solutions across the continent. Sustainable ADA's solution will be sharing stories from change agents in Africa and the diaspora, engaging with Cardano and cascading disruption, creating a better tomorrow today. If we get funded, we'll produce articles and more content on the website, shared across social media platforms that connects Cardano with sustainability, UN Sustainable Development Goals, donut economics, circular economy, and the sustainability and climate change focused projects in Catalyst. Sustainable ADA, global mission-driven newsroom. Project Catalyst proposal number 2. Our problem statement. There isn't enough participation and story sharing about stake pool operators in the Cardano ecosystem, in different languages globally found in one place. Our solution? Sharing stories, facilitating and increasing meaningful participation from mission-driven stake pool operators and stakeholders globally within Cardano. If we get funded, Sustainable ADA will contact 193 countries focusing on all the language groups within Cardano and aiming to get a story written by a writer, at least one person representing each country in the world and talking about their connection with Cardano, blockchain, and sustainability. Sustainable ADA, the stepping stones to a sustainable and equitable world for all.
Hello, Cardano community. We are the SPOs of Fika, Nani, and Gingerpool. We are proud to tell you about our Project Catalyst funded project, The Great Filter. Project Catalyst, Cardano's governance project, is burdened with tremendous success. Over 800 proposals were submitted in Fund 6 alone. It is becoming increasingly difficult for you, the voter, to keep up with all the submitted proposals.
We use transparent and objective filtering criteria to ensure proposals account for all relevant information, such as target demographics, performance metrics, or an action plan. We are relaying only the acceptable proposals, which will help you to stay up to date with Project Catalyst proposals. The filter protocol is open source, welcoming the community to submit their own changes to the filter criteria.
We will create YouTube and podcast content to present to you the submitted proposals in an easily digestible manner. So by following our content, you will be able to save valuable time by only being presented with the most matured proposals. This will help empower the entire Cardano community in taking part in shaping the future of our network. Let's build the world's largest decentralized governance body. And let's build it together. We need you.
Hello everybody, I'm John Hughes, representing Cubic, and I'm here to talk about certification of Plutus smart contracts. We're working on level 1 certification based on automated testing rather than on human auditing or formal proofs.
DeFi, centralized. This discourages merchants and governments from participating. The high latency, high fees on main chain discourages businesses and from conducting transactions on the main chain. Developers and enterprises are negatively impacted. facing scalability issues, platform performance, and cost challenges result in bad user experiences and churn. So what we're seeing is dApps are on the move. So we're seeing transactions from the Bitcoin main chain, for example, are moving to Lightning, which is a layer 2 scalability solution on Bitcoin. We're also seeing migration of dApps from Ethereum to other layer 1s, including Cardano and many layer 2s. Why? Because transaction fees and latency matter. It's the key to competitive consideration and adoption. So we want to make Cardano future-proof. And in simple terms, Hydra's vision and mission is to make Cardano more scalable. Why are we building Hydra? Because we want to continue to support growth and adoption of Cardano. We want to make Cardano more attractive to use and more valuable. How will Hydra do it? We want to be able to increase the speed of transactions and be able to ensure that transaction fees are near zero, thus enabling many applications and many use cases at scale. So what are we building? Based on IUG research, we're currently building a reference implementation of the Hydra protocol as a layer 2 solution on Cardano, which provides scalability with the same level of security as Cardano. Hydra makes Cardano's network better, faster, and cheaper to use. And I'll be highlighting some benefits here, starting with high scalability, which is a critical key component for mass adoption. It enables the dApps to scale off-chain. Instant transactions. So with very low latency, we're talking sub-second transactions with Hydra. Near zero transaction fees. There is no base fee transaction fee in Hydra as compared to main chain, and this makes many use cases economically feasible, especially at scale. It enables microtransaction output. Instead of the 1 ADA minimum on main chain, we can now go down to Lovelaces, which are sub-pennies. And this is critical for micropayments, such as loyalty, tipping, and other use cases that require this microtransactions. Another one is minimal storage. Storage on the main chain is increasing and will continue to increase. And after Pluto's release, it is expected to grow even faster. Hydra makes it very economically and storage friendly. It removes the storage capacity overhead on the main chain as well. All the necessary computations, transactions that happen off-chain is short-lived and doesn't move to the main chain. Only the final settlement goes to the main chain. Hydra also offers, the one key benefit is isomorphic, which means it's highly compatible with Cardano. You're able to take any Cardano UTXO into Hydra, and it offers the same capabilities and functionalities from the main chain to Hydra. It also inherits the same transaction validation, rules, and script execution, which can be used on-chain and off-chain. So Hydra makes Cardano better, faster, and cheaper. Again, it's highly scalable, instant transactions, near zero fees, microtransaction output, minimal storage, and is isomorphic. Hydra's target segment are any entities or organizations that need blockchain scalability. Any organization, any developer, any startups that wants to make their products usable and scalable. Start with some of the top use cases, payments and micropayments, for example, where countries and citizens can participate in seamless, scalable payments. Even enterprises and B2B sector can participate in that. Micropayments, we're talking about streaming content, tipping, loyalty, or the concept of cashback can happen seamlessly and scalable on Hydra. Telecom top-ups, roaming settlement between intercarriers is also a key use case. Another category is the gaming sector, where we can have in-game purchases, rewards, NFTs within a game, all scalable seamlessly at very low cost. And then other top use cases are RealFi, where we're talking about real-world use cases such as decentralized IDs or financing for the average people, for common people, especially in places in developing nations or developing continents, geographies. We have also use cases around DeFi, decentralized exchanges that can utilize Hydra, where on-ramps, off-ramps, trading all happen kind of with low to minimal fees. We have a well-versed team of researchers and engineers behind Hydra. We started with the head protocol, and you'll see a demo and a technical preview in the technical talk, which I encourage you to attend. But essentially, at a high level, the head protocols enable a set of participants to transact instantly and as many times through a multi-party state channel. You're able to run smart contracts or payments, transactions off-chain. So with that, to recap, Hydra aims to make it frictionless and scalable to onboard 1 billion users onto Cardano. We encourage you to come build with us if you're a business, a startup, a developer, and have a relevant use case. Feel free to reach out to us. We're very motivated and excited about this new technology. And with that, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the team, and be sure to attend the technical talk after this one. Thank you.
Okay, we are rolling. The most important problem I would love to see the community work together on is the notion of culture and governance and what that means. So what does good governance look like? I don't think we know the answer to that yet. So we have to figure out a way to work together. Roles, responsibilities, accountabilities, how we work together, how we collaborate, that system of governance. Otherwise, we're just going to get lost in arguments and fighting and he said, she said, and it will be counterproductive. We need to make sure that we set up a governance system that clearly articulates even what a mentorship network might look like. I mean, companies need mentorship. We all need mentorship. Everybody needs a mentor of some sort, or help, or advisement. So I think we can explore new ways through Catalyst challenges, actually, in building that mentorship network out. And it doesn't mean people have to do this for free. Some people are going to be more altruistic and say, hey, I've run this Fortune 500 for, 1 billion years, and now I'm retired, and now I want to help you kids, develop something, and I'm going to give my advice for free. Or you could actually incentivize people through Catalyst as well and pay people to form this sort of mentorship network. I would love to see something like that, where you get an expert class, where we define what expert class means. You get a different variation within that expert class too. Like lawyers is a good example. There's different types of lawyers. Law is hard. There are many different aspects of it. So if you get a team of lawyers that sort of come together and want to help these projects get off the ground and do things legally and regulatorily compliant, that's going to be really, 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 really powerful. And that's where I'd love to see the system go towards, is getting these pockets of experts, mentorship, network build in Cardano, and be incentivized to do so as well. Let's bring the experts together. There's people old and young that have expertise. Also incubators and accelerators. So we are launching with 2 for the summit. We're launching with Entrepreneurity, and they run like a really short sort of boot camp, like really just get in there and look at the projects and help teams incubate really, really quickly to actually go into the second stage, which is more of a longer term incubator accelerator. And we're launching with ICE Addis, who is an Africa-based incubator. And I think incubators and accelerators are going to be essential too, building that network out and making sure that people have access to that network so they know how to build their teams, their product, their company. Some are just going to be products, by the way. They're not going to be companies. Others are going to be applications. I mean, there's different sets of things that are going to be built there, and you need different support structures to do it. I think being very careful about voting on different aspects of Cardano, for example, once governance is fully decentralized for Cardano, making sure that the right people, so I mean, I always found this too at the Cardano Foundation. You don't want me voting on something to do with like protocol updates, right? And parameter changes. I mean, I'm a clever girl, but I'm not going to actually be able to weigh in too deeply on this. It has to always be the case that the person that is voting, if it is on a subject or a topic that I'm not an expert in, I should always have that very easy user experience where I can delegate my vote. In fact, a lot of times on the council, when I was voting and I wasn't aware of something, a very technical aspect, I would abstain from voting, because that's the more appropriate way to do something like that. But I could see more specialized voting circles if we do the circle approach in governance. And again, I'm not a governance expert, so we need to talk to governance experts. Voting circles that vote on their area of expertise, to me, would be one start, one way to actually build trust into the system, where you're trusting that there are people voting on parts of your system that actually have that expertise. The role of culture on the ethical side is very interesting. So what is ethics? What does it mean for a system to... So a system is not used in inappropriate ways. Like, for example, how do you ensure that your protocol is not going to be used to accommodate genocide and sharing information of people that want to do something nefarious? That means really putting some bright minds on it and thinking about how you make sure that a cult of personality type person can't take over. How do you make sure that the adversaries can't overtake the system and 51% it? These are complex questions. And again, governance, let's just bring the top governance experts in the world together, have a roundtable, and discuss it ad nauseum until we figure at least version 1 out, where we feel like we're like, okay, we can start here. And then you have to just constantly be iterating, though, and updating the system and amending the system and monitoring the system. So inside of your own governance process, you have to make that absolutely essential. Before you can move on to next, there needs to be something that unlocks, even like a key, where you're like, okay, well, we've reached this governance peak. Now we can move on to this one. You have to make sure in a governance system that it requires self-monitoring and self-amendment and self-reflection according to those values. I think governance is the systems. It's who gets to vote. How do they vote? It's systems of accountability. So it's sort of like the rules of engagement, which should be imbued by a value set to sort of monitor those behaviors. Politics is more about the operation, I think, within that system. So getting things done and how people actually get things done creates a political system of special interest groups or parties or, just groups of people with different interests basically doing things and trying to curry favor for their ideas. I don't know that politics has a place in this world, or maybe it just needs to be redefined or re-examined. It's okay to, whatever we mean by politics, it's okay to have ideas and challenge those ideas and so forth and lobby for your ideas, but it's not okay to be toxic. It's not okay to be an asshole. It's not okay to be a psycho/sociopath in this world anymore. That old regime that they've built all of these institutions on are built, I swear to you, by like sociopathic tendencies and psychopathic tendencies. That is absolutely, this is one area where I will say, like I try to say, not be prescriptive. I think we should be very prescriptive about checking, balancing the don't be an asshole policy, don't be toxic, and let's please learn to eradicate that together. And if you teach somebody how not to be toxic, that's great. We can teach people. I've tried to teach people this, but we have to put a limit on how many times you tell a person until they don't correct themselves. And they have a responsibility, being part of a collective, to be respectful. I hope we as a community put strong emphasis on defining that and refining that and making it sort of a first-class citizen. Because the way we behave with each other, whether it's in an authoritarian way, whether it's in a collaborative, open way, that's going to be game-changing. And I think we have a lot to teach the world about that and an opportunity to experiment with that. The qualities that I see in Cardano community members, these people are very passionate, definitely. They're very intelligent. I think that is what separates our community as well. And what is intelligence? Well, it's just, to me, like a hunger to want to know more and to do something a little bit different, to solve problems. That's intelligent to me. People that actually don't want to just sit around and participate in the world that exists. These people want to actually, all of us want to actually change how things operate. So inquiring minds, they're very inquiring. Everybody just sort of it's like a lot of people have just sort of woken up and we're all sort of looking around like, oh my gosh, what can we do together? And I really hope that we're clear about what we mean by a community. We're all community members. I find we're just very diverse in our own interests. And that makes us like sort of just very unique to rebuild and rethink things, because when you're thinking about building and rethinking different systems, there's a whole bunch of different things to think about. It's quite complex. So you need sociologists, you need psychologists, you need people that are thinking about anthropology and evolutionary philosophies and so forth. So yeah, we're just incredibly diverse people. That's why, again, I don't see a hierarchy in the community, and I really hope we don't develop that hierarchy. My advice to the community is to constantly challenge and question gatekeepers, gatekeeping functions, constraints like that. Your leaders, I mean, they should be held accountable, just like I hold all the leaders in IO accountable for our emerging culture. I don't own the culture. I'm working with a very amazing team to actually develop the culture in IO, but there's no but, and the point is that it emerges. They need to participate in it as well, but we need to hold each other accountable to these behaviors that we iterate and develop with each other. So you as the community, because I'm a community member, you're a community member, we're all community members. IO as an entity is technically a community member. Exchanges are community members. We have to develop, or we should, or possibly could, develop, put culture at the top of our agenda, culture and governance, and I challenge us all to do this, and to really, once we get some sort of value and behavior set and a nice governance system, let's keep evolving it and challenging it and perturbing it to a more fair, whatever we define as fair, sustainable, equitable, open, whatever we define those values, let's keep on it, and let's keep each other honest, including the Cardano Foundation. Let's keep them honest too. They have a significant amount of resources now to help us build. I am not on the foundation anymore, but I want to hold them accountable too to help us build and help us build in the right way. So let's hold each other accountable. Never forget to be kind, be patient, be open. Not one of us knows all the answers. So just listen to your fellow collaborators, really truly listen. And please just pay attention to the fact that values and culture is really important and can make or break our system, and so can governance. So please just put that as a first-class citizen, even before what technology we're building, because these are the guiding principles. Governance will enable us to do what we need to do, and the values and behaviors and principles and strategy will sort of set that direction. And then the real fun can begin.
Yeah, AB marker, sleep.
So I explained blockchain as a trust platform. In the internet, we connected everyone around the globe. And with blockchain, we can actually ensure that you are speaking to the right person and that you are interacting with the right service, that the person that you are interacting with has the history they say they have, etc. So you can verify history, you can verify credentials, identity, assets, property, ownership. I was working on an healthcare project to record patient-doctor conversations on the blockchain, and I saw the potential of the technology to change the way we are working today in the future, and be what we call classically disruption, but it's a positive disruption. It's actually an evolution, I think, more than a disruption. So yes, we are evolving, and new technologies are evolving with us, right? We have new ideas, there's new problems. Receiving a mail is not physical anymore. You receive your email digitally, right? Wherever you are, your location doesn't matter anymore. Being a citizen of the world, right? Difference with legacy systems where you hold the card, you hold the identity, but you don't hold your data. If the system change, you don't transport your data with you. It stays locked into the system you were in. So I'm French, right? All my history of being a French citizen disappeared when I decided to move to the US. I had no financial history. Impossible to prove my history because the standards are different, and no one will trust a piece of paper that you are going to bring with you, or even a phone number that you are going to give, for example. And so when I settled here, I was like a newborn, right? No credit score. When the world is itself being global, you have to change the processes and bring new technologies. And blockchain actually solve this, because you connect people around a network, right? A global network, and Cardano is one. And then you can build those processes. You can organize the work stream of people around business processes. We are building a network for the long term. We have an opinionated approach, right, about how you should design a robust platform that is going to support the financial system of tomorrow, right? It's not a small objective. In order to build a network, you need to build it the right way from the get-go, and actually putting some time in designing it, not rushing, right? We aren't here to launch one feature as fast as possible because the market is waiting for it. No, we are going to launch it when it will be ready to be used securely. I would see Cardano as a component of a global trust network, basically. Blockchain being that layer of trust that is lacking in the internet, I think Cardano will be a component of a major component of that layer of trust. You establish trust by being real, I think. At IO, there's no BS, there's no bullshit, right? We have an opinion, we keep repeating the same thing. Charles did that for over years and years, and still saying the same thing to everyone. And people can actually judge us on what we deliver and how compliant it is to what was said, right? And there are many evidence of that we are a trustworthy company doing a great contribution. I mean, we are by the biggest producer of open source code. The quality of the code is very good. Governments can actually check what we did and prove to themselves that we are a trustworthy partner for integrating technology. I feel sometimes our industry, the crypto industry, is a bit combative, right? We have to win over X, right? We have to take one more position in the ranking. The ecosystem fear that if some other networks is succeeding faster, that's a problem. That's not a problem. It will help you at the end, because globally we are far from having convinced the world to use blockchain, right? How many countries integrate Bitcoin, for example. We have to convince the world, right? So there's a place for everyone. Contributing is not enough. You need to set a tone. You need to launch alliances. For example, we talk to the others. We actually propose things, because if you take the initiative or establishing a communication, there will be profitable for both sides. So the next step is definitely interoperability and creating bridges between networks. Because it's the nature of the network is to grow, it's to connect people, things, and other networks, other people. In order to grow, you have to connect things. When we talk about working on the main concept of adoption, like where do you go, who do you have to convince, right? It's a difficult task, I think, to pioneer this industry. We are still in the pioneer age. Like, people are thinking that we are arrived, we aren't. If we have to convince the world to use blockchain, we have to do so much work. Like, it will take some time to convince governments to use it, to create currencies, but also to express international standards and the regulation to catch up also, the law to catch up. Why? Because the law is here to organize business processes to protect people. And you need to be protected in a global economy. We have a lot of work in terms of working on specific verticals, identifying those verticals and where they are, and working with the users or the adopters who actually need it the most. Working with the developing world is for Cardano is an amazing opportunity, because there's many things to improve, many systems to put in place, and we have the chance to actually design those systems and our mechanism with those emerging economies the right way at the start, and not trying to bridge an existing legacy system that is here for decades and bridge it to it's a different work, right? So it's an amazing opportunity, and I think blockchain in the next few months or years will develop rapidly in emerging economies. There's a mix of rigor, creativity, because we are a very creative company where we have hundreds of ideas per month, and you have to select the ideas with the most potential, and you have the ambition of delivering something, and that's very interesting to be part of this and trying to achieve that goal. The objective of Cardano for 2025 is to reach 1 billion users. So users can be people or devices, but that's the goal. It's an ambitious goal. The bar is really high, right? And the fact that people keep pushing with the vision and delivering what is expected is amazing. It's a process, right? It's not easy.
Welcome everyone to the Psg Keynote. Very happy to have all of you here. You probably, I don't know if you have heard about Psg, the name per se, which stands for Professional Services Group. But we'll start this presentation by telling you what we have contributed to. And probably, I'm pretty sure that this will ring some bells. So let's start there. Let's start with what we have done. And then let me explain to you what we are here to do, and how can we help. Okay, so let's get this started. The first engagement, actually, a good 2 years ago, if I recall correctly, is Nuance, right? Nuance was the very first Psg engagement. And for them, you probably have heard about this. We protected a limited edition Omnis shoes for Nuance in the launch that they had with Kawhi Leonard. And we utilized the Cardano blockchain for that. This small engagement gave birth to what we know today is Psg. And what we stand for at the end of the day is, we increase or created this stream of enterprise and government adoption of blockchain. And we basically help these entities to utilize Cardano and utilize blockchain in general. After Nuance, you also probably have heard about BIFchain. We help BIFchain utilize Cardano as well. With BIFchain, later on came WMC, which we are starting to help on how to build a decentralized incentive mechanism to fulfill their vision. And the Ethiopian Minister of Education. And with all these, which is, probably have heard of all of them, there are many others that will be announced in this specific summit that we are also helping or contributing to. So at the end of the day, professional services is, stands for, or we provide a limited set of services to help governments and enterprises adopt or understand. Then first understand the technology, then understand the technology, how the technology can help them, and then help them craft a path that goes from the vision that they have towards an implementation plan, right? To give you an example, actually going back to the very first example, Nuance. When Nuance came to us, they had a counterfeit problem. And they said, we think that blockchain can help us here. Can you help us understand if that can be done? And we engaged with them, and the result of it, you already know it. With the Ethiopian Minister of Education happened in a similar manner. They wanted to resolve a problem with digital identities. We engaged with them, we helped them, and now we have a project that is under execution. Okay? So at the end of the day, professional services, we help companies and governments adopt blockchain by bridging the gap between business and blockchain. Business is all about how do we solve specific problems for the target audience that we have. Governments are about how do we solve the problems for the citizens that we have. And all the problems fall into different categories depending on where you're playing, depending on what country you are. What we do at the end of the day is we try to bridge that gap between the problem that you are seeing firsthand and the solutions that are currently on the market, or the tooling that is currently on the market. We make that bridge and we help you cross it. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about engagement experiences. How exactly it went. I already, gave you a little bit of an idea of how exactly it happened. But for instance, let's utilize the BIFchain scenario, which I haven't. So BIFchain was a company that was already utilizing blockchain, but they were having problems with the blockchain that they were utilizing. So it was a enterprise that already knew blockchain. They just needed help with solving specific problems. So they contacted us, they presented us their problem statement, they presented us what they had done. We went into a workshop with them, we identified where they were and where they wanted to go, and we bridged that gap and executed a very simple project for them. In the case of the Minister of Education, it was somewhat similar. They had a specific problem about digital identities. They had specific programs that were surrounding that, and we went in and proposed a better way of managing digital identities that at the end of the day we are implementing there. In the case of New Balance, they came with a very specific business problem. I'm having a problem with anti-counterfeit, and I've heard that blockchain can help us here. Can you tell us if that can be done? And then we identified the problem. We asked the specific questions about, what exact problem do you have? Why are you being hurt so much because of counterfeit? What are the numbers? Where are you having those problems? Is it on all product lines or not? And so on and so forth. And after that, we ended up realizing or defining a way to go that was agreed by the two parties. So all of these engagements are very different. BIFchain is about supply chain. New Balance is about anti-counterfeit. WMC is about telco, and then Minister of Education is about digital identities. But the process was overall the same, because the state right now of adoption is roughly the same. I mean, as the industry matures, as the blockchain industry is more widely adopted, let's say, then you will have specialized tools and new markets will arise. But at this stage, the type of engagement is roughly the same. The steps that you have to go towards problem identification, solution options, solution decision, solutions architecture, product discovery, all those are roughly follow the same steps. So we utilize a common process, and then we apply it to different industries. Okay, so a little bit more about the process. The first thing that happens is that there is a reach out. We get, there is an email email address in specific that you can utilize for contacting us. I actually have the email at the end of this slide, so you'll have time to type it down. But the first step is the reach out. So a company or a government tells us, we are having this problem. We believe we can help you. You can help us. Sorry. Can you help us? Can we meet? And so on and so forth. So there's the reach out, then we meet, we do a couple of sessions, we try to identify what the problem is that that client is having, and depending on the complexity of the problem, which means depending on if the problem has been solved in the past or not, depending on its complexity as well, then we engage into a longer or shorter workshop, where we try to detail in a specific the problem domain, in a specific the target audience, in a specific all the different domains, all the different areas that will make a specific solution appeal, or that will qualify a specific solution for the problem. Then after we do the workshop, there is a design and proposal, which we go over the different possibilities, and we propose what can be done depending on the trade-offs that are in front of us. There is a decision that is made, and then the next phase is to go and build it, to build a minimum viable product, a minimum solution that tests the major hypotheses, we deploy them, and then we measure how successful those hypotheses and that solution were. Okay. Now let's go. Now that we understand exactly, well, not exactly like where do we come from? What do we do? It's very important that we start. Let me give you another dimension to this equation, which is the services that we provide and the departments that actually are serving the clients that we have, right? So the first one is the Department of Consulting, which provides a different variety set of services. So I already called out, already mentioned the workshops, but there is also the ability to provide digital transformation advisory, specifically in blockchain, of course. When there is a agenda that in the technology vision of the company or the government that can be enhanced by utilizing these technologies, then we can help shape that agenda towards a decentralized industry, or by utilizing these technologies. There's also the third service, which is solution discovery. The enterprises and governments brings us specific problems that potentially can be solved with these technologies. We analyze if that is, if they really can be solved by those technologies. And after we have done that, then we just go through the solution discovery process. The second department is solutions architecture. Solutions architecture provides technology implementation advisory, solution development, and blockchain architecture services. So clients typically utilize these services when they know what they want to build, right? Consulting is more when you want to explore or when you want to understand how these technologies can be utilized in your context. Solutions architecture is when you have defined how they could be utilized in this context, and now you need help. You need help with how exactly do we execute that implementation. The next department is deliveries. Well, deliveries is the department that comprises project and program management and co-pilot programs. So we have found, in the past, some clients that can have the ability to run programs. Some clients, they would like help running programs and running projects. So we have projects and program managers within PSG that will, of course, make sure that when we do implementation projects, that when we do implementation programs, that we deliver, but we also have engaged or could engage in co-piloting projects and programs with the clients, depending on what's the purpose of the project and what's the problem to be solved, and how much or how many independent parties are there required for the program to be successful. Okay. Last but not least is the data analytics arm. Data analytics is about metrics gathering and validation of hypotheses. So if we go back to the other portfolio of services, there is a solutions architecture service in there that, or even the consulting, going back to the consulting piece. The consulting piece, when you engage in consulting, when you engage in solution proposal, when you engage in solution discovery, there always would be a series of hypotheses that you will have to do to define a proposal, to define a solution. But it is until you actually do the first iteration of that solution that you will have, in many cases, if not all, the possibility of testing those hypotheses. So data analytics we consider a fundamental part of the equation by allowing us and our clients to identify if what we propose and the solution that got co-developed was successful. And it also gives us a objective way of iterating the solutions that we build together. Okay, so, in short, it is comprised of these 4 departments. Consulting for if there is a problem proposition, but it is not understood how blockchain can help and what type of solution will appeal the most. Solutions architecture, when the problem and the solution are understood, but there needs to be some help in technology implementation advisory. Delivery is when you actually want to execute an implementation, delivery, or an integration, and data analytics to make sure that the hypotheses that were laid out in these specific in this set of processes, if they are being, if they were correct or not. Okay, so how exactly do we engage? If what I've said so far, it's interesting for you. There is a specific email, as I said earlier in the meeting, that is enterprise.services@iohk.io, and once you send an email to that address, then a business developer will be assigned to you. We will try to understand what the problem is. We will try to understand if blockchain can help you or not. And if we go through that feasibility assessment and it is successful, then we can start engaging in solutions architecture, implementation help, project or program execution, and then data analytics. Okay? All right, so that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed it, and this is a little bit of what PSG is. Thank you very much.